We are live on an AMA with DeFIRE, and I want to give just a minute before we get started here and give people an opportunity to join and make sure everything is good with the stream. This is the first time that I've live streamed on the channel, so this for me is a new experience as well. But thank you all for being here. It looks like we are up and going. Let me just get the chat open so I can see if anything new pops in. And yes, so we are good to go. Thank you, first off, FireFly, for taking the time to join on a Sunday evening. I really appreciate that, and I know people have busy lives, so first off, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for hosting, Ryan. It's great to be here. It's the sort of first external AMA for DeFIRE, so we are excited to see how it goes, and also excited for the questions people sent and posted. There were quite many and very accurate questions, so happy to dig deeper in them.
Cool. So let's just go ahead and kind of dive right into them. First off, before we get into question number one, though, if you don't mind, can you just give us a quick rundown of what DeFIRE is? I know it's a large undertaking and it's a really cool thing, and I've looked into it a lot more than maybe some people. But I'm curious if you could just give us a 2-minute version of what it is exactly.
Absolutely. So I'll say DeFi, it's an ecosystem, the way we look at it, and it sort of stands on 3 pillars. The first one, obviously, there will be some financial elements to it that we'll probably have a chance to look into a little bit closer a little bit later. So we have that element. The second element is the community itself, or the way the ecosystem is going to be governed and managed. It is going to be a decentralized organization, so DAO. So that's the element number 2, or pillar number 2. And the third is we put a strong focus on education, and thus we have launched DeFIRE Academy. So education and knowledge as a sort of third pillar. So we have those 3 as a sort of foundation for DeFIRE ecosystem. I mean, not going depth into any of those, but essentially we have the community under a decentralized organization. We have the DeFIRE Academy, and lastly, going to be various financial offerings.
Very cool. And I know that going backwards a few months, the phrase of DAO kind of has a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths because they tied that to massive interest in rebasing. But a DAO, I think it would be good to give people a quick definition of what a functioning DAO looks like, kind of how that works in something other than what we've seen with the Olympus model.
Absolutely. So as you've mentioned, in the last 6 months, or probably since the inception of the first reserve currency protocol that happened to be Olympus on Ethereum, we've seen the DAO name, or the decentralized autonomous organization name, and thus DAO acronym, being sort of associated or taken over by those type of protocols. So at some point, I mean, DAO was just synonymous with Olympus and forks like Olympus projects. And I mean, DAO has nothing to do with any type of financial products. It is a way to organize a community that has a certain common goal to drive, a certain undertaking together. It could be a financial undertaking, could be financial protocols, it could be educational, could be charity, could be pretty much anything. It's just a form how the community organizes itself and how it sort of chooses to work towards a common goal, essentially.
Cool. And along with that as well, I know DeFIRE has a different take on the structure. From reading through Medium, do you mind to give us just a little rundown of how that's different than the typical DAO?
Yeah, certainly. A typical DAO, the way we call it, I mean, not us, but we sort of borrow the term of differentiation between DAO 1.0 and DAO 2.0. Now, I'm sorry to say, but I can't really recall where the term is coming from originally. We give credit, though, in our Medium article to to the sort of person or lady who invented that differentiation. But anyhow, DAO 2.0, the DAO 1.0 was essentially, or most of the DAO 1.0 projects are organized in a way where there is a core team or founding team that has a central sort of power over the decision making in the project, and then everything revolves around that team. So nothing is introduced, nothing changes unless it passes through the core team and gets their approval. Although there is typically governance introduced through voting, often with governance token, but those decisions or those votes or the voting processes are sort of phrased or framed in a way that sort of lead to a certain outcome that is desired by the core team. So that is sort of, although it has this facade of being decentralized, because obviously tokens are distributed among many in the community, but ultimately the voting is sort of steered in a direction that is desired by the team, the core team. And I mean, I haven't seen, so I can't really comment on that, but it would be interesting to see what would happen if the actually outcome of the vote was against what the team desired to achieve. So I would be curious to see if the team would introduce that, or well, would sort of follow through the decision that's been taken. So that would sort of show whether the core team is truly respecting this decentralized decision making, or whether it's just there to keep the facade of the decentralized organization. So DAO 2.0, the difference here is that there is no core team or founding team. Yes, there were people who sort of had to go through this inception phase to create DeFi in the first place. Yes, there were three people who sort of happened to then gather more around themselves, and more people around themselves, and then through sort of joint brainstorming and different trial and error to arrive to sort of the shape of the protocol, or say rather ecosystem that we know today. So basically, yes, there was the founding team of people who sort of had this idea of creating DeFIRE, but when we sort of did that, we didn't really know which direction we were going to go. Yes, we had certain vision, and that is still pretty much aligned with what we had when we started together, but we didn't really have like a clear picture how to get from A to Z. I mean, there were many different steps to take, and those, I mean, we nailed down and discussed within the early community to help us shape how this ecosystem could look like. So now to sort of transition to this DAO 2.0. So as I said, I mean, there is no term like core team or founding team, and it doesn't really exist any longer in our terminology. I mean, we have teams. Of those teams, they are sort of divided into different fanatical, I'll say, different teams with different skill sets. We have one for engineering work, we have one for community engagement, we have one for marketing, operation, and the last one is for knowledge. And all of them, they have a team lead, so the person that sort of makes sure that the works inside the team are being done or being sort of followed through as basically agreed or promised to the DAO itself. So the DAO is, if you could sort of look a little bit, or make a comparison to the corporate world. I know that DAO is far from being anything corporate, but if we could make a comparison here, then we have DAOs of the community, the token holders, the owners of the DAO. They are the body that makes the decisions. So they are the decision makers. And once the decision is made through a vote, then we have different teams that directly work to DAO, with DAO, under DAO, to follow through and execute on those decisions. So each decision would most likely come with a certain budget that would be approved by the DAO itself. And then once that's been done, then the teams receive those decisions and execute on them first, proposing a plan to how to get those decisions through, and then are they thinking executing them. So that's sort of the difference where old DAO you have core team being centrally involved in everything. Here you have multiple teams that have different competences to deliver what the DAO wishes to achieve.
Cool. All right. So that was the intro. We took a couple seconds longer than anticipated, but that's fine. We have plenty of time. So I have a few questions for you that are my own, and then we can spend the rest of the time in the community questions. So we just covered actually 2 of those already, actually 3 of those. So that leaves me with 3 of my own points that I would like to get that are coming from maybe a different viewpoint. And first question I have for you would be, how can someone who is completely new to crypto get value out of DeFi?
Absolutely. So, yes, now will be, there will be, again, different aspects where actually a person could get value out of DeFi ecosystem. I would say, well, the first and most obvious would be to go through the materials that our DeFIRE Academy proposes and puts together. There, knowledge is always, it's always valuable. If the person just wishes to educate him, herself, then there will be a place for that. So that's, that's sort of the value number 1. Value number 2 is, well, and that would be more like a value transaction between 2 sides, because, well, obviously, if the person wishes to contribute to the project itself, then there is also place for that. And we have a very clear and transparent guidelines for our contributors. Whoever wishes to contribute to the project, we have written a guideline for that, and under which terms and what they could expect in return. And that document, there will be like a fundamental document to another sort of document that we'll be publishing shortly, which is the DAO principles. So a document that would be describing the principles of DeFi DAO. It doesn't go into depth, or it doesn't define every single small element of it, because that document needs to be agile and flexible, because it also needs to leave room for the community to come with input. So that's sort of the document. But as one of the document that be part of that principles would be a compensation scheme, clear, transparent, for anybody who wishes to contribute. Obviously, it's as I said, it's a transaction of value between the person and DeFi DAO. So obviously, to receive compensation, there needs to be a valuable input. So that works both ways. So that's a value proposition number 2. And thirdly, there will be various financial protocols delivered by DeFi, and one of them, the first one, will be Blaze. Blaze would be offering containers, as we call them. Containers would be sort of instruments that live on blockchain and use, of course, blockchain smart contract code to build or to wrap simple and complex strategies into something that is very low touch. That essentially it boils down to deposit and withdrawal. So a person could be exposed to different strategies of different risk profiles. And the value here is well, there are multiple values to be gained from this, but first is time saving. To build strategies yourself and to explore the market to find right opportunities for yourself, it is very time consuming. Secondly, there'll be a team who would be looking for the most optimal solutions for different risk profiles, and for that, the person would be receiving on one side, exposure to the underlying assets. If the person wishes to be exposed to certain segment of the crypto market, then they would have a chance to get that through a container. So not necessarily buying different tokens themselves. That would be handled by the container itself. On top of this, they'll also receive a yield generated by those assets. I mean, we see many similar protocols that offer investors, an exposure to certain basket of assets. They do so, but there is, but the only benefit for the investor is when the underlying assets they increase in value and not necessarily in any other aspect. So, and here, the differentiator we offer would be that those assets would not sit idle. They would be deployed to work to generate yield for the investor itself, or himself or herself. And lastly, we have the whole construct of our main ecosystem token, DeFIRE, which we call governance or ownership token. If the person wishes to become the owner or stakeholder of the ecosystem, there will be a possibility to lock those tokens, meaning, commit your token to a certain time, and then they would be sort of then turned into governance ownership token for you. And by holding those, you will be receiving a revenue stream because the protocol or the ecosystem will be sharing the revenue stream it would be generating from different fees with the holder of the token. You'll be then also having a chance to participate in the governance and voting because that token will be the governance token. So that would be probably the main value propositions, just from the top of my head, that an investor can actually access.
Mm-hmm. And the Academy, for someone who's completely new to crypto, or even especially DeFi, but maybe even crypto as well, is there a cost for that?
No, there will be no cost to that. The Academy will be free of charge. It will be a huge project to run this academy. Obviously, we are now in the early days. We are focusing strongly. The whole sort of concept of DeFi also, and thus our sort of name DeFi, it relates to the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. So the majority of our educational material at this point is revolving around this financial independence and financial literacy. So you can't really succeed in the financial market, whether it's a traditional or crypto, unless you have certain basic understanding of what you're dealing with. We're not talking about that you have to understand the complexity of different solutions you'll be using. It is more to understand fundamentals like risk management, hedging against the risk. How to define your financial goals, how to define realistic financial goals, right? Because obviously everybody dreams of deploying 1,000 and taking out 1 million a week later, but we all know it's not realistic. It will not happen. Yes, maybe one person in a million will be lucky. It's like winning in the lottery, but but there has to be, the rest will just lose that 1,000, right? If they take that bet. So there is no free money in the financial market, whether it's traditional or crypto. It's just ultimately it is a transfer of wealth from one side to another side, right? And the more you can educate yourself and to understand the fundamentals of how that works, the better prepared you're going to be to succeed in the long run.
Yes, I absolutely agree on that one. All right, my next question would be, how can the most frog degen person that's out there get value from DeFi?
Oh, well, that is a good question. There'll also be an offering. Obviously, with those different containers that I mentioned, there'll be various risk profiles. There'll also be high risk profiles that I would imagine a more degen audience would be probably interested in. Obviously, with higher risk there comes higher reward, but I mean, it's a double-edged sword, and again, there is no free money. I mean, you're looking for higher return, you need to take higher risk. I mean, one cannot come without the other. I mean, that's how financial markets work. So there will be that offering. We will also be once Blaze protocol is a little bit more mature than in the early days. Once we have launched, there'll also be a possibility to create your own containers, and where you would be able to propose a strategy that you think is is a reasonable one. It works for you. You would be able to create one, and probably in the first place, obviously there will be low interest unless you have a track record of your performance. But let's imagine you are a new investor. I mean, not a new investor, but a new investor that creates a container. You will have to prove your track record. So probably you will have to come up with your own capital to your own container, and then demonstrate that you have skill to multiply that capital and sort of work accordingly to the strategy you have proposed yourself. So that would be a place for more veteran investor who has proven track record to show that they can thrive in the crypto space. They can multiply their capital, and if they will be looking for other investors to benefit from their strategy, there would be a place for that. And then obviously there will be a value to be gained for both sides. There will be obviously the upside for the less experienced investors who can get access to some strategies that otherwise they wouldn't be able to figure out themselves. And there will be the upside for the creator of the container in the form of basically performance fee.
Very cool. So there's a comment here that I find very interesting. I hadn't thought of this, but the comment says an easy degen Blaze container put into the Ignite protocol to leverage your position. Is that something that's on the table at this point?
I'm just reading to understand. I mean, Ignite, we haven't touched upon Ignite yet, but Ignite will be the second protocol we have in the pipeline. It will be it will offer self-repaying loans to whoever wishes to take a loan. In a nutshell, you will be able to take your Blaze container as collateral deposit into Ignite protocol. You'll get a loan based on the collateral you put. There will be different loan to value ratios, and we don't have details of that yet. But obviously, the riskier the Blaze container, the lower amount you'd be able to borrow to limit the risk of liquidation. And probably in the first place, when we will be testing the grounds and making sure that the investors are not exposed to high risk, probably the first proposition would be for Ignite would be to accept a Blaze container with stable coins or very low risk Blaze container. So here, instead of the yield that I mentioned earlier, Blaze container would be generating, instead of them going to your wallet, they would be used to repay the loan. So if you can leverage your position, yes, you will be able to. I mean, obviously that comes with a risk. If you do that with stable coins, probably lesser risk than if it was a very high risk container. Because as who was that? Total Chaos rightfully noticed, you would be able to get your loan by the Blaze come into or deposit into Blaze container again, take the loan again, and then do a couple of loops if you wish to. So yes, it will be possible.
Cool, awesome. Last question I have before we go to Discord: where is DeFIRE going to live?
It's a very relevant question. We started off having identifying ourselves with Polygon Network. That was where we sort of started off. But soon we discovered that what we are building, so the Blaze protocol is going to be multi-chain, because to capture the most value of the DeFi space, we would have to be deploying strategies that is not bound only to one chain, but different chains, because there is value to be gained on all of them. So Blaze and Blaze containers will have treasuries on multiple chains. So that sort of started steering our also thoughts to, well, if that's the case, then yeah, how can we sort of be most welcoming for for future investors and people interested in our ecosystem. That sort of resulted in the idea of running our pre-sale, our community seed, as we actually like to call it, as a multi-chain event. So investor would be able to deposit their funds on either Avalanche, Phantom, Ethereum, or Polygon. So there will be value coming from all four chains. To then the final element that actually requires a chain, a designated chain, would be the governance, or where the ownership token would live. And this is the DeFIRE token. And that requires one chain. For that, we haven't settled on a final chain yet. Here we have different ideas how to do that, but ultimately the decision that will take would sort of revolve around how secure is the chain, how scalable it is, and how many users and sort of opportunities it offers. So that would be sort of those three elements to make the ultimate decision on which chain we choose for DeFi. But other than that, users or investors will be able to interact with Blaze and Ignite later on through different chains. And to start with, there'll be those four that I mentioned.
Very cool. Let's go ahead and take a couple questions that we have on our chat here before we get into the Discord questions. Two from John Jones. So first is talking about wanting to be able to put in limit orders. So I guess that would probably be dependent on which chain we land on and what DEX we use.
I would like to be able to put in limit orders. Will that be possible? It would be perhaps good to hear what John Jones means in terms of, is it for DeFi token? Is it for Blaze containers? Whether you would say, you have a Blaze container you're tracking, you'd like to get into it, and it has, let's say, 4 tokens, Avalanche, Luna, Polymetric, and Phantom, for example. And then you sort of set a certain price of those 4 underlying tokens for your limit order to trigger to buy into the container. For example, is it this John Jones talks about, or is it strictly about the DeFi token itself? So that is a good question, though. But yeah, it would ultimately depend on the chain and the DEX where DeFi would be listed, if this is the question related to DeFi.
Cool. And his second question would be, having been burned a lot by, I'm assuming that's DAOs in the past, how do we prevent rug pulls? So maybe we can take a second and talk about what security features and transparency aspects are in place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, first and the most, I would say probably not an expert, but at least in my eyes, the strongest of them all is the multi-sig. And here we'll have, to start with, there'll be 3 team leaders on the main multi-sig for the treasury. And that would actually apply to all 4 chains that I mentioned, because they all will have their own treasury, plus 2 external. In this coming week, we will propose 1 candidate that is a known figure in the DeFi crypto space, as one of the multi-sig holders, as the external person. And the second would propose to choose a person from the existing DeFIRE community. And so these two people will be included in the main multi-sig, or form main multi-sigs, because there'll be 4 treasuries. And at least one signature from those external holders will be required to conduct any transaction from the main treasury. Whether the community accepts or whom the community chooses, it will be subjected to the community snapshot votes. I mean, for that, although we haven't launched, but those who are part of our Discord and are active probably have noticed and already have used in a previous snapshot vote that we use Flare token that we sort of decided to distribute with the community as a sort of pre-ownership token. It is, as we call it, reputation based. So people who are active, engaged with the community, who are also helpful and contributing to the community, receive Flare token. It has no financial value. It is not transferable, so it cannot be sold. It is just linked to your wallet, to yourself, and it represents your reputation within our ecosystem. So by holding those tokens, the community can vote even before the launch has happened. So the decision on who the external participant of the multi-sig will be also subjected to a vote, snapshot vote, as we have seen already on the KYC. And that is sort of the second element I could touch upon, the KYC. We have a collaboration with a company called Synapse.io. It's a French company that offers institutional solutions for KYC processes, essentially. But they are now also entering into a market of KYCing the companies itself. So not the investors, as they used to do until now, but they are now also offering KYCing, the founders of protocols of companies or whatnot. So we have asked the community if they accept Synapse.io as the KYC provider. The community accepted that. Now we are in the process when we actually have provided the all necessary documentation they asked for to sort of identify Glitch, who is our main developer. So he is the person that is KYC'd on behalf of the team leads. And then within the team leaders, we are all KYC'd with each other. So we all know who we are, where we live, how we look. We were on multiple video calls with each other, and we have built this relationship within the team leads as they are today over 4 months now. So we have full trust towards each other, and we are fully transparent to who we are. And on the top of that, Glitch will then be the person that is then KYC'd with this Synapse.io provider, and they will hold this information until basically legally obliged to reveal that. So that's on the KYC. In this week, so the week that is starting Monday, tomorrow, or today, depends where you live. We'll deploy the pre-sale code, the pre-sale or community seed round interface. So the web interface will also be deployed. So it all will be open source. Code will be available for anybody to log into. We'll run most likely a bug hunt event where whoever comes with or reports there is a bug in the code will be gratified for that. So we'll also run that campaign this week. So I would say this will be the main 3 elements. Obviously, the closer we get to Blaze launch, this is where a serious engineering work is taking place, and also the complexity in terms of the smart contract code.
Yeah.
And this is where we'll be engaging an external auditor to look through the code. But that is basically the work we have planned in a couple of weeks from now. But for the pre-sale itself, these are the main elements. And obviously, on the top of that, I mean, the whole communication and transparency we try to run on both our Discord and Twitter. So, but that obviously is sort of the trust we are trying to earn with the community. It's not it's not measurable as the other three elements, but it's sort of through our own actions. So we're trying to show the community that we basically mean, serious business here, and not really any rug pulls or some short-sighted gains over the community. We are here for a long run, and we all been on the other side. I mean, we all are part of the community, or we are participating in other protocols, and we've seen how they are run, and we've seen where they succeed, where they fail, and basically, we took time to learn those lessons, and now we basically want to deliver an ecosystem that we, being an investors, would want to be part of them ourselves, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And for anybody who doesn't know, multi-sig means that there are multiple people that have to sign off on any transaction before it goes through, which is an extra security feature. So one person can't send an entire treasury to their own wallet. And also KYC, for anyone who doesn't know, means to know your customer, which means that in the event something malicious were to happen inside of a project, that the founders and creators of the project are known and they have disclosed their identity to a company. And that company has agreed that only in the case of something negligent or malicious would they release their identity to the public or to authorities as needed. So if anyone doesn't know, those are those two definitions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I should have perhaps also, because I operate with those terms daily, that sort of they are now the second nature. But yes, it's great that you explained them
Sure, yeah.
to the public.
No problem. The last question here on the table before we get to the Discord questions is the Cosmos ecosystem on the table?
Well, that would be a question to our developers, but we are exploring other ecosystems. Then I'm not an expert on what type of smart contract code Cosmos uses, but there are two main ones. There is Rust and there is Solidity. All the smart contract deployed on Ethereum and all the chains compatible with Ethereum is based on Solidity. So if Cosmos is part of that and Cosmos uses Solidity, then obviously the transition from our offering today and in the weeks to come to a new chain that is compatible in terms of the smart contract code, it would be relatively more simple if it was, for example, a deployment on Terra blockchain that uses Rust, or Solana that also uses Rust. This would require 100% of reworking our offering, our ecosystem into a new smart contract code. So it really depends on, but whether it's Solidity and Rust, we are already thinking ahead, a couple of months, and we'll be exploring other chains. It doesn't matter whether it's Solidity or Rust. I mean, that will not be limiting factor. It will only limit, how fast we can deploy on the new chain, because if it is not compatible with what we have today, it would obviously require more coding work.
Okay. All right. So let's get into the Discord questions now.
Absolutely.
First Discord question: what will be the max amount that each individual can buy during the pre-sale?
So we have thought about it, and ultimately the structure of the pre-sale will not be limited to, how much an individual or how many tokens individual can purchase. It would be actually the little bit the other way around. In the round one of the community seed, we accept funds on 4 chains from any investor, small, larger, doesn't really matter. all the TVL collected, so the total value locked throughout the round one of the community seed sale is finished. We will take that amount from 4 chains and divide it by the supply that is available in the round one, which is 10,000 DeFIRE tokens, and that will give us the reference price or the final price for the token. And everybody is going to receive their tokens corresponding to the amount invested. So this is how we are going to structure round one. In round two, which will then happen soon after the first one is closed, it will be a day after. Here we have the reference price, and the reference price then in the beginning of round two will be increased by 20% as a starting price, and then as the closing price for the round two will be a multiplier of 2.0. So here again the supply is 10,000, but it is essentially first come first served. So again, if there is big demand, then obviously people have to be quick and participate in the event when it starts, instead of waiting for longer time. Just to also make the differentiation, I mean, round one is also tied, or the access to round one is tied to the reputation token I mentioned earlier, Flare, and here. Basically, you need to have 3 Flare tokens in your wallet to participate. And those tokens are airdropped every week, and we'll also obviously airdrop it a day or two before the pre-sale or the community seed round, to make sure that people have received their tokens that they've earned before the event. So here is rather not limiting the amount, but it's sort of bounding it to your engagement and how helpful you are to the community itself.
All right, very cool. Next question: what joint projects with other companies are you ready to develop?
So I mean, here I would say our very long-term vision, and that ties to sort of one of our sort of values of being basically, accessible, or not really having any limits on who can access our product, being as inclusive as possible. So we would at some point wish to engage or start a collaboration with a company that would be on-ramping off-chain or traditional finances investors to DeFi. So that is our long-term goal. When it is going to happen, it's hard to predict. I mean, it's a fast-paced world, but it would be one of the partnerships we would like to start at some point. So other than that, the partnerships or collaborations we are interested in at the moment is not necessarily with companies, but more with the founders or creators of those 4 chains that we are going to deploy on, because we see great potential in working close with them, both in terms of educating the community that participates on those 4 chains, and also to bring in new users that are not so familiar with blockchain and DeFi as such in the first place. So that would be like, in the first place, it is more like those 4 foundations that work behind the 4 chains I mentioned, and in the long run, it is the on ramp for the non-blockchain investors.
Nice, very cool. Thank you. We have another question here in the chat. What kind of mechanism makes DeFi unique and more valuable? I know we covered this earlier, but maybe you can give a quick little recap.
Yeah, absolutely. So here again, that ties to the 3 pillars the FireFly ecosystem stands on. Well, the community or the decentralized autonomous organization, and how people can interact and engage in it, and ultimately It will be about sharing the ownership of the DAO, of the centralized organization, and as thus of the entire ecosystem, and benefiting from that. I mean, the end users benefiting from that. Then we have the educational element, so DeFIRE Academy, to combat financial illiteracy and educate people about the about the responsible participation in the financial markets. And the third is the financial protocols themselves, Blaze and Ignite, to start with.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Next question from the Discord. What are the benefits of holding the token as a long-term investment? Can you tell us about the motivation and benefits for investors to keep the token for the long run?
Mm-hmm. So, well, we have to distinguish between DeFIRE token itself and then the governance ownership token GDeFIRE. So the difference here is, well, by holding DeFIRE, you are obviously exposed to the market price behavior of the DeFIRE token itself. It can go up, can go down, but it has a fixed supply of 1 million tokens that will not change. It's a fixed supply, and all the tokens will be distributed to the community over 18 months. That's sort of the distribution time window we have. So here there is no, I mean, the token is not inflationary. There will be no more DeFIRE than 1 million. Then if you want to participate in the governance and have ownership of the ecosystem, then you have a chance to lock your DeFIRE, time lock your DeFIRE. And there will be different time locks available from 1 week to all the way to 4 years. I mean, depending on your time horizon and how you see your commitment to work for you. We have written a little bit more about it on our Medium when we discuss DeFIRE token. So I'll not go into details about how this time lock would work, but essentially what you receive once you have locked your DeFIRE, you receive GDeFIRE, the governance token. By holding one, you obviously have a possibility to participate in the governance, so to vote on the future shape of DeFi ecosystem. Then you also participate in the revenue sharing of the entire ecosystem. And here, the more protocols DeFi ecosystem introduce, the more revenue, obviously, will be generated, and thus you as the holder of GDeFi, thus the more revenue your one token is going to give you. And then there'll also be weekly votes on how rewards that I mentioned earlier. I mean, we distributing DeFi rewards over 18 months. So there'll be a weekly vote by the GDeFi holders to decide which container receives which portion of a weekly portion of DeFi rewards. So here you can also be benefiting yourself by obviously voting on the container that you participate in, or you can, perhaps there will be some, as we already call it, container wars, where there will be people, sort of gathering together and trying to promote the container they participate in. So there'll be that element too. So I would say, yeah, I mean, long term, holding GDeFi, our governance ownership token, it is essentially like having a share in a company. You're receiving a dividend and you own part of the ecosystem. And the more we build, the more we develop, the more we add to the ecosystem, the more valuable your underlying DeFi is going to be, because as I said, it will have a fixed total supply, and with increasing revenue, then most likely the DeFi tokens will be more valuable over time.
Yep. And to be clear, that's a time lock. That's not a burn. So at the end of your time lock,
yes, absolutely.
you get your original DeFi back.
Absolutely, yeah. So once your time commitment is finished, you receive your initial DeFi tokens back. Yes.
Cool. And for anyone who doesn't know, a burn is when tokens are taken completely out of circulation and they can never be recovered, reducing the overall supply, which tends to make the price creep up, but it becomes deflationary. Okay, cool. Next question. One of the biggest hurdles new protocols have to overcome is the issue around liquidity. What plans does DeFi have to ensure a stable and liquid economy?
Yeah, that's a very good question and a very detailed question. So absolutely, it comes through for a veteran. I can already tell in the DeFi space. So yeah, liquidity. That's always a struggle. I agree for new protocols. Here, what you can probably see if you had a chance, I think it was Carlos who asked the question, as far as I remember. If you had a chance to read our article on the community sale, was that 20% of whatever is going to be raised in the first two rounds will be allocated as the initial liquidity for Blaze and DeFIRE. So we are aware that yes, there is a need for initial liquidity to avoid essentially price swings of DeFi token. Then the other element that kind of controls, maybe not tackles the liquidity as such, but prevents price swings, is that ultimately the tokens that investors will be receiving once the protocol launches, I'm referring to the community sale rounds, they will be locked on their behalf into the DeFi token, and there will be different time locks to vary when those tokens are released back to the investors. The time locks we are proposing in our Medium article are the minimum time locks, so the investor can here, always, if they wish to commit for longer time, they can change the time lock and then make it even longer. So here, by introducing this, we are not going to see a big price swings in the initial days of after launch, because those tokens will not be liquid. They will not be available for transactions. So we shouldn't see big price swings in the first days, and that would allow Blaze and then the entire DeFi ecosystem to build the liquidity, the treasury, and be ready for once those tokens are unlocked and returned back to the investors, then the liquidity will be deeper to accommodate those transactions.
Cool. Thank you. Next question. With the market currently in an uncertain position, and in parentheses here is inflation, war, supply chain, etc., why does DeFi believe now is the best time for market entrance?
Yes, that's a good question. I would say we actually are very happy for the existing market conditions. I mean, not referring to the very sad event that is happening in the Eastern Europe. I mean, that is obviously very sad and tragic. And I mean, we have started working on DeFi way before that. But ultimately, we're glad that the market is in a state of kind of not really, or being undecided, you could say. It doesn't really go up, doesn't go down. It is sort of ranges in a certain between, the top and the low price. I'm just referring now to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and not really referring to all other coins. But ultimately, Bitcoin is within a very, very well-defined price range between 36,000 US dollars to 45, and combating very hard to break those 45,000, I think, over this weekend. But anyhow, and what comes with that is sort of a consequence of that sort of market and the decline from, let's say, 60 or just under 70,000 Bitcoin price towards the end of the year was that all those sort of projects were promoting or building their audience and community purely based on impossible to retain returns, million of percentages per year of returns. So I mean, they were thriving because the market was booming, was the prices were going up. People were getting richer and richer from their investment, and they were not really so concerned to invest in those protocols that were, I mean, they couldn't really run in the long term because, I mean, there was no really, sustainability built into them. And the consequence of that was that all those protocols, they just died. I mean, they lost interest, their TVL, so the total value locked, dropped heavily. And those protocols, I mean, they entered into a very difficult time, and most of them, I'm not really tracking and don't have any metrics, but I would guess probably 95% are just out of the market, I would imagine. So we glad for that event, obviously not glad for whoever invested and, sadly lost their money with those protocols. But here it sort of gave us an opportunity to build an offering that is different from those, and to show that, well, you don't need to receive 1,000,000% interest per year to have a sound and an attractive DeFi ecosystem. And this is what we are building. So by that, yes, the market is as it is. It's neither bullish nor bearish the last 2 months, but it's just steady, stable, and just calm. And it sort of gives us an opportunity to offer, to go back to the original offering of DeFi, where 20% per year on a stable coin was great return. And we want to sort of build that culture back, and then sort of show people that you can't become rich by just winning a lottery once, once in a, not even lifetime, because it's in a lifetime of 1 million people that happens, right? We just want to show that to build wealth, it takes time. You have to work for it, or let protocol like Blaze work for you to get there. So that is sort of our look at the market. It is what it is, but we are actually quite positive about launching now, because we are back to the roots of DeFi and the sound proposition.
Cool, thank you. All right, the next question. Besides Twitter and word of mouth efforts, what earned media opportunities does DeFi plan to execute, and will the community have an influence on those campaigns?
Yeah, well, so as we probably already we can sort of say that, well, the discussion we have today, it's neither Twitter nor Discord nor word of mouth. It is YouTube AMA, and we'll be having more of those over the next week before the community sale rounds. On top of that, we are building our Reddit presence, or sort of expanding our Reddit presence. That's been a little bit neglected by us, but now it's a place where we will be increasing our presence, because we see many communities that sort of share this vision of sustainable wealth creation are just present on Reddit. So not necessarily crypto or blockchain communities, but communities that think about wealth creation in a serious way, and we would like to sort of cater towards those communities. So that's another thing. And then the sort of second element to the question, or the second part of the question, whether the community will have a say in it. Well, absolutely. Once we have basically a budget that would need an approval for further marketing activities, and that will actually be part of the budget after those 2 rounds of community sale that will take place within over a week, next week. there'll be different budgets proposed for community approval, and this is where the community will approve or disapprove the proposition. There will be a chance to comment, to propose something else, better alternative. If the community thinks whatever is going to be proposed is not up for their acceptance, so they prefer something else. So yes, that will be subjected to the community inputs and also approval.
All righty. I've got 2 questions left. The next one, with Rary Capital and I'm going to say FEI Capital having a successful merger to form Ferrari, kind of an interesting way to read that, whose Fuse product is very similar to our Blaze protocol. Are there any similar mergers that DeFIRE is looking or would be open to making?
Oh, so we are probably 6 months, ahead already with this question.
Yeah.
I mean, mergers. We would like to launch successfully our Blaze and then Ignite, and then work on the partnerships I mentioned with different foundations that stand behind those 4 chains. If there will be a merger or partnership with another blockchain DeFi, project, I cannot really, I mean, I can only guess, and then yeah, possibly. I mean, we'll see what the future brings. I only, just add, on that. I mean, whatever attractive merger or acquisition or whatever we call it might come, down the road, it will always be subjected to the community approval, and the vote with use of the DeFIRE tokens. So obviously, if the community thinks, this event, the future event, might benefit them, they'll obviously vote in favor. If they think it is not the case, they'll reject it. So yeah, was there also in this question how we are going to be different from?
No, it's just asking about the merger itself.
Okay, the merger itself. Sure. Yeah. So I mean, yep, possibly, but it's very hard to comment on that. We are too early still.
Okay. And the last question, is there any set launch date?
Yes, there is a set launch date. It is 1st of April. That is actually on the screen right now. That is the date. More details on the date and the duration and structure of the pre-sale of the community seed round is on our Medium article that is probably linked down below on this website. It's also in the top right corner of our website, the little M icon. Just clicking it takes you to our Medium website, and over there'll be an article on the community sale details. So, but yeah, first of April, that's the launch of the launch of the pre-launch event, if I should say like that.
Very cool. That concludes the questions that we have. Do you maybe want to have a little closing statement, and then we could wrap up for tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, was glad I was glad to be here and to go through all those questions. I was, speculating a little bit. Yes, some questions I could see ahead on our Discord, but some are like here on the chat and from yourself. I wasn't aware, so I was sort of a little bit speculating on what might come my way. So I hope I did well to sort of answer those questions. And again, we're trying to be transparent and open in this, and we're not claiming that we have answers and solutions to everything. It is still a work. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done, and the work we are doing and the community and the contributors we have today is going well, is going strong. But everybody who is listening, I mean, you are more than welcome to reach out to us and offer your help if you think your skills are you can fit well with what DeFIRE is trying to achieve. we are more than welcome to onboard anybody who would like to contribute to the project. So that would probably be it from my side.
Great, thank you. So from my side, first off, thank you very much. I know it's late on a Sunday evening, so thank you very much for taking the time to be here. Also, thank you for everyone who watched and who wrote questions, and the questions from the Discord as well. This was my first live event on my channel, and from my side, I'm very thankful that we pulled it off and made it work, and thank you again for being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just, if I could close, I'll just
Sure.
shout out Mr. Cyan from our Discord. I am watching because I like listening FireFly. He's so good answering questions. I just had to read it.
Nice, nice, very good.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Great. Have a good evening, and thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next How to DeFi. Take care.